Well, hello, sports fans. It's Larry Eater with RunBlogRun, and we're Stuart Weir, and this is Athletics Chat numero 3. And Stuart's somewhere in Wisconsin. You're right outside of London, aren't you, Stuart?
I'm in Oxford. An hour from London.
Wow, you're even more thoughtful. You know, I fell asleep on the train and was woken up by some young students who were worried about me. I was supposed to be going to Birmingham, and I think I missed the train or something. I just flown in, and they were very nice in Oxford, and they told me what to do, and I did it, and I got to Birmingham. So I would like to spend some time in Oxford sometime. But greetings and salutations. How are you today?
I'm good, thank you. The sun is shining.
Yeah, well, that's important. Yeah, the sun is shining. I'm in my backyard, so you'll hear my mother has had 8 different sets of chimes in the backyard. And we've been having a bit of wind in lovely San Jose, besides protest and a curfew for the first time in the 45 years I've been here. The curfew starts at 8:30 at night and goes till 5 in the morning. There's been protests about 12 blocks from our house. So it's rather unearthly quiet at night here now. But that'll be going on, I think, for the next week. Thank you for your pieces on Joe Coates. I have posted the first one, and I will be doing 2, 3, and 4 over the next few days. And she seems like a very interesting person, and maybe perhaps a different approach than what's been in charge of UK athletics before, but I think they need something new at this time. Are they just getting pummeled by the British media right now?
To start with, I am impressed with Jo, and I was impressed that she was willing to give 30 minutes to talk just to me. Mm-hmm. I think it's a very difficult time for newspapers at the moment because there's no sport. So everyone is either writing historical stuff or looking for any kind of political stuff. So therefore, there's more of that going on. Mm-hmm. And sadly, we have far less real athletics, track and field writers than we've ever had.
Sure.
And so therefore you have the general sports correspondent who may not know a great deal about track and field and who may not have been to any events in the last year, but writes pieces as if he's the world's leading expert.
Yeah, we have that over here. James Dunaway, the late editor of American Track and Field, one of our big stalwarts, used to go a little nutty every 4 years when he, as he called them, the Olympic beat folks would show up who had not been to a track meet and would show up at the trials and write these stories always, which are about drugs or, that kind of stuff. And it would get frustrating, and I understand it. I think it's going to be, I'm very curious just to see what's going to go on. Hugh Brazier this last week, the executive race director at the Virgin Money London Marathon, said that there's a big chance they're not going to be doing the event. He wouldn't come out and say he's canceling it yet. What's your take on that? Have you heard anything new?
Well, I'm not remotely surprised to hear that, because at the moment we have in the program the GB trials. Mm-hmm. Can I explain to you how the GB trials operate? You see,
please.
People who win that get selected for the championship. Oh, okay. Sorry, there is no championship this year. So yes. I mean, we did have our indoor trials, and all the top athletes opted out of it because there was no World Indoors to go for. Mm-hmm. So while we've still got the outdoor championship and trials in the program, it's a pointless exercise. Yeah. There's nothing to go for. And there's no European Championships, there's no Olympics. We've still got the Gateshead Diamond League in the program, but Joe Coates told me that will not take place without spectators, and there's no chance of there being any spectators.
So that's a question I have for you. On BBC World Service last night, what I was listening to as I was posting, they said something rather innocuous. It was about Formula One auto racing, your Division I football,
Yeah.
and one other sport. I think it was tennis. And they said that the government was going to say, you guys don't have to follow the rules for COVID if you show that you're putting COVID safe practices in place.
Mm.
And the impression I got is they were going to open these guys up to allow them to have fans there.
No.
Okay.
No fans. We mentioned last week that if you were to come to England now, you would be required to quarantine for 14 days.
Yes.
So what they're saying is, for these sports that you mentioned, particularly the Formula One auto racing, they're saying the drivers can come in, race, and then leave.
Okay.
They're not be required to come in 14 days early and wait, because otherwise that wouldn't be feasible. There is a tennis tournament, but as far as I know, that is only for British tennis, because it's Andy Murray and his brother who are organising that just for a bit of fun. But you see, the Premier League football or soccer, which has a TV contract worth $4 million a year, spectators probably make up 5 to 10% of their income.
Okay.
So therefore, if they go ahead, as they are going to, with games with no spectators, they lose 5 to 10% of their income. The problem with the Diamond League is that most of the income comes from paying spectators and adverts, commercial sponsorship. And the commercial sponsors aren't that interested if there's going to be no spectators. So therefore, that isn't feasible. But I mean, basically, the Premier League soccer have got 8 rounds of games to go, and they're going to do that starting in the middle of June until perhaps the end of July with no spectators. But all the games will be on live television, and all the games will be at different times, so that if you have nothing else to do, you can watch all 92 live.
Wow.
But the Premier League are also saying that their next season, which would last from approximately September to next May well be without spectators. So if they're saying they can't have any spectators, I mean, what kind of marathon could you have? You could have 50 to 100 elite runners running, but you're not allowed to have spectators. And how do you stop spectators when there's just the roads? And again, we talked about this last week. How attractive is that to television?
That's what I don't know.
We normally do the 6-hour coverage, and as we said last week again, that if you stand on Tower Bridge, people pass you for about 4 hours. And it's a completely different event if it's just an elite race. So again, I'm not at all surprised that they don't think it's viable.
It's just, what's been weird is Berlin hasn't done their official thing yet. Light kind of went out in your place. Oh, there we go.
Yes, I'm just going to put the light on again. So it's right.
Wonders of technology.
I know it's technology, but what Joe Coates said to me about the Diamond League is that we have kept it in the program, and we will keep it in the program until the government tells us we must get rid of it.
And what it seems to me like is the only place that, we have the Oslo Impossible Games coming on June 11th. I think that's a good approach in Oslo. It's almost, and what I understand, it's almost all local athletes.
Yes.
Mostly the Norwegians. So they can do something like that. Can we do that in other Diamond League settings? Is that the way we're going to have to go? Because you wonder if athletes are going to be able to travel. In the Czech Republic right now, they have 173 track meets over the next 2 months. But the Czech government says no more than 100 people in a stadium at a time. Well, hell, that sounds like, a lot of meets that I've gone to in the U.S. where it's just the athletes and the coaches,
Yeah. Yeah.
They're going to televise 5 or 6 of them live. I mean, they've got Barbara Spodakova, they've got Tomas Stanek and Pavel Mazlak among the Czech stars, but I don't think they have anybody else but Czech athletes, so it's going to be interesting to see what happens.
But for Premier League football or soccer, they reckon they need 240 people in the stadium to make the event happen.
Wow.
And that's a game which would have 32 players. So,
wow.
If you need that amount of people to enable all the essentials, including the broadcast, and perhaps a few written journalists to make it happen, then I don't know. I cannot see how you're going to do things with just 100.
Yeah. No, it's going to be interesting. If here's our next topic. What should the IAAF be doing right now? Or World Athletics, excuse me. This whole World Athletics thing sometimes kind of, I guess they're jazzing it up, but it's after so many years, I still think IAAF. What should World Athletics be doing right now to promote the sport?
It's very difficult when there's no sport to promote.
Yeah.
And I think that you and I both have in the back of our mind a fear that the Olympics won't take place next year.
Yeah, I just can't see how. I mean, with what John Coates said last week, and then Thomas Bach also saying that, I don't think we're going to see a global championship till 2022. And it sounds now like the Commonwealth Games is going to be a challenge for world athletics, but Katarina Johnson-Thompson, everybody wanted to do the Commonwealth Games. She doesn't think she can do both. Or is it? And Dina Asher-Smith was talking. They had a piece last week stirring up a little bit of controversy that Dina can't do that all.
Well, and there's also the European Championship.
Yeah. Where will they stage that at?
That is in Munich.
Okay.
But, that's always the same time as the Commonwealth, provided the Commonwealth is in the Northern Hemisphere.
Sure.
I mean, if the Commonwealth is in the Southern Hemisphere, it's at a different part of the year. But certainly in 2014, we had the Commonwealth in Glasgow, and 2 weeks later, the Europeans in Zurich.
Should we tell our dear readers about what you helped me pull off at the Commonwealth Games in 2014, where you told a few folks that I was going to try to get the U.S. back into the Commonwealth?
Well, yes. I mean, I think all is not lost.
I had never thought about that, but I just thought that was brilliant. That was a wonderful. It was my first time at the Commonwealth Games, and I had always heard how wonderful they were, and I really enjoyed not only the quality of the event, the camaraderie, and the crowd was fantastic.
Yeah. The great thing they say about the Commonwealth was because virtually everyone speaks English, the camaraderie among the athletes is easier.
Yeah.
Because everyone will at least have English as a second language, which wouldn't necessarily be true in a World Athletics event.
Yes, that is true. That's true.
But I mean, it is an interesting one. I mean, if you have athletes with the possibility of doing the Commonwealth, the European, and the World Championship. And of course, the curious thing with the Commonwealth is that you compete not for Britain, but for England, Scotland, Wales, or Northern Ireland. And so for a Scottish athlete, there will be significant pressure to represent your country.
Yeah.
in that. And I mean, I think, for example, it'd be quite difficult for a Laura Muir to say, well, I'm not going to run for Scotland. So there's that extra dynamic. And I mean, if you're a sprinter, you can probably do all three. But with the longer events and some of the throwing events, perhaps not.
What did you think about you've interviewed the coach for Laura Muir, Andy Young, correct?
I have not actually interviewed him. No, I mean I've chatted to him a number of times.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by. I've got to talk to him a little bit about his training, and now he's got Gemma Recchi, he's got Laura Muir, and Gabriella DeBoer-Stanford among his athletes. The thing that I do know about him is he drinks a prolific amount of Coca-Cola in these large liter bottles. And I'm surprised. Is it Diet Coke?
I think it's definitely Diet, but I thought it was Pepsi, and I think you've got to be careful that we don't upset our sponsors.
Yeah, okay. Let's not upset our sponsors. So let's respect the Diet Pepsi. I put in the other thing that it was a diet soda drink. So
yeah.
I'll leave it at that. But he seems watching him with his athletes, I'm quite impressed. And big part of the game is for the athletes to have confidence in their coach, and he seems to be able to do that well. And so I applaud him. I believe that as Laura has come up to be such an important cog in UK athletics, he must be under a lot of pressure, because I sense that within any country. I know in the U.S., when an athlete starts doing well, there's pressure for them to change coaches. They've got a coach that's, quote, unknown. And I find that just to be silliness, and you see athletes moving around, and I always think that when you change coaches, you've at least got a year that you're not going to see anything out of them. It just takes a while to get things going. But
I don't think. Well, I was just going to say, I don't think that's likely to happen with Laura or Gemma, because the three of them live in Glasgow area, and you see, there are not many coaches that they would be likely to go to, and moving away from there is not very likely. But again, we talked about this before, that you take someone like Dean Isher-Smith, who started working with John Blackie when she was about 10. Jess Ennis, who first met Tony Mancello when she was 13. And neither of those have had any other coach. But it's interesting if you compare John Blackie's role with Andy Young. John Blackie was at the World Championships in Doha, but I am not aware of him being at any of the Diamond Leagues, for example, whereas Andy Young will be with Laura and Gemma at any meet they're at. It appears. I mean, like the little meeting in Liévin in northern France, where Gemma was running, Andy was there. And again, I don't think I've ever seen Laura without Andy. So it's a kind of different style of coaching. And again, when they go to training camps, he will be there. But then, because John Blackie also has non-elite athletes that he works with, it's a completely different approach, really. And again, as we mentioned, because we do not have the same tradition of college track and field, and the idea of a college coach and athletes staying on with their college coach afterwards is not part of our normal narrative. It is really quite quite different here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. How do you think, what's your gut tell you when we will have a meeting schedule that's a regular schedule? Or you think we're waiting until 2021?
I think definitely, but my fear will be, will we actually have it in 2021?
No, I tend to agree with you. I just don't know. Sorry, that's the wind chimes in my backyard.
Yeah.
Since the house is 90 degrees and the air conditioning isn't working, it's much nicer out here. So I'm sitting in the backyard.
Right.
Yeah, I'm trying to get this around here. You know, in the U.S. right now, 40 cities have curfews. This hasn't happened since the late 1960s, and I recall the time after the assassination of Martin Luther King and then of Robert Kennedy. I was 11 years old, and that's all you saw in the news. And you add that with the still partial lockdown across the U.S. on COVID-19, and we're already getting talk about a second wave, and then in certain 22 states, the numbers are up. So what you've seen over here is the high school season in all 50 states not happening. Although last week there was a fascinating race in Sacramento, California, where a young man ran 3:59.54, and there were 8 young men in the race. It was videotaped, and you can watch it, I think, on Mile Split. So there are a few things to keep people going. And my guess is there'll be a few more ventures out there. But I believe people are just going a little bonkers. I do a daily training program for 16,000 high school coaches, and we pass it on to the athletes. And, you know, we've had to change the workouts so that it doesn't affect, wear them down their immune system. And we remind them each day that you still need to stay safe. And it's hard for adults to understand things they cannot see, touch, and feel. And I just wonder what it would be like to be a 16 or 17-year-old. When I was in Wisconsin, there was a little town of 1,000 about 10 miles from me called Palmyra, and I would go over there with my mask, because there's the only coffee shop open in the county, and get an iced coffee. And talking to the couple of young people who worked there, all 3 of them were graduating from high school this year, were thinking about college, but they didn't get the normal things that typical high school kids have, no proms, no graduations. And I know it's got to be terribly difficult. And over here, I don't know if it's as much in the UK, but we get a lot of people who see some conspiracy in COVID. And I've tried just to tell people that I know that the response changes, and you got to be, one time you weren't supposed to wear masks, now you're supposed to wear masks. But it's because we're learning about things, and people have got to be careful, and coaches have got to be careful too. And I really hope, especially young coaches, the elite coaches, I think have figured ways to start doing things again. The young coaches have got to be careful, because while we don't see huge numbers of young people getting sick, we just don't know enough about this. And that's the stuff that scares me. There used to be little all-comers meets I went to a few miles from here where there'd never be more than 50 or 100 people on a Saturday. But you wonder if those kind of things are going to come back, I do think people watch anything sports related on TV. And if we could do some things like we did with the pole vault, And I'm wondering why we haven't seen any more. Why can't we do a javelin? Why couldn't we do a shot put? I know Ryan Krauser just put a shot put ring in the local high school by his house. And I know of a couple of the top athletes who have rings in their backyards. I mean, John Cadena used to practice in one in his backyard. So we have that ability to do these things. It just takes a little bit of creativity. And I think World Athletics should be leading it, And so I'm curious to see where that's at. The one I don't hear anything about, Stuart, is USA Track and Field. And I know it's rather difficult for them because all they've been doing is giving cancellation on junior championships, on masters championships, on the open championships. And I know that's got to be terribly difficult. But there's a time right now where they could help us promote some of the younger athletes, doing videos, Instagram, things like that, because that's what our readers want. I mean, I'm posting 3 to 5 videos a day, and people love it, because they can watch it any time they want. We take here in my program and we do it as one massive 40-minute piece, and then we also do clips, and people seem to like it both ways, so it's I guess they think that we have something to say, Stuart, which is kind of
really
scary.
Well, yes. Just excuse me a moment. I'm just going to put the light on.
Sure. And you guys are watching Athletics Chat 3 with Stuart
Just
Wire.
on the off chance that people might like to see me.
Yes, that's kind of a good thing. I appreciate that,
Because it's 9:30 in the good old UK.
Okay, we got about 5 minutes to go. Any change in this week about your feelings with the Olympics?
No, I mean, the big question is when will a vaccine become available and be widely distributed? But I still feel pessimistic about the Olympics without a vaccine.
Okay.
And I feel pessimistic about many Diamond Leagues next year. I mean, I think next year could be another year. And you would have to ask, what will that do to the financing of our sport?
Yeah, no, that's what I'm scared about too. It sounds like there was an interesting story that Richard Pearlman, who does a sports blog and sports news service, he did an analysis of all the global sports federations and their budgets. The only one he couldn't do is World Athletics because they don't list their budget publicly. And he was most curious about that, and I'm most curious about it too, because in this time, anything that gives confidence in the stability of a sport would be appreciated. And I think the transparency is really, really important. And I'm going to send a note to President Coe and just ask him if there's something that he can do about it. And I appreciate they're doing a lot of juggling. Oh, and we've got one little less topic for our last 4 minutes. It looks like Lamine Diack's trial is finally happening on June 8th.
Yes.
I'm still doubtful that it'll happen, but are we ever going to get past Lamine Diack?
Well, I don't know, and I mean, there seems to be substantial evidence against him, but you wonder who else might be implicated.
Yeah, that's the question. It's what will we find, and what will Papa Diack, the son of Lamine Diack, do to protect himself?
Yes.
And when it first happened, the first person he took down was Nick Davies. Nick was the former press officer for the IAAF and well regarded. And it was kind of surprising, but I think he gave the message that no one was safe and that he would find a way to take a chunk of flesh out if someone went after him. I think that's the sad thing for me. I feel in a way bad for Seb Coe because he's had this stench and this pale over his time because he's had to deal so much with the Diack thing.
Yeah.
And I really think that as it got closer to Diack leaving, all that Seb was focused on was really getting to the place where he was running the show, and he thought it could all be better then. And I think he was sadly mistaken. And I appreciate some of the things he's trying. I'm really happy that he's out speaking to the media, which is really, really important.
Yeah.
But I'm curious to see. I know the French government wants to get this over with. The French district attorney wants to get this over with. And they've got Lamine Diack under house arrest. And I think he's on, about 750,000 euro bail. So he's locked in his house with a little, ankle bracelet on. Not the way any of us want to spend time, but many of us are spending time without an ankle bracelet right now.
Indeed, I was just thinking exactly that.
Yeah, so it's just kind of... but you know what event I think I would like to see? I want to see the shot putters, who are a real cast of characters,
Yes.
Thomas Walsh, Ryan Krauser, Joe Kovac, the whole crew. They've got such a great persona.
Yeah.
And I'd love to see them doing some events too, and a little bit of trash talking too, because it keeps it kind of fun. I'm trying to figure out how you could do remote sprints, but it could be kind of fun to even consider it, and or have not match races, but the kind of stuff they did in the 19th century where they'd have handicap races.
Yeah.
Maybe we take someone like Adam Jamili and have him race against a top cricket athlete, and he spots the cricket athlete 45 meters in a 200. That would be a kick, and do it where it's socially distanced. I mean, if you and I can think of these things, I think the guys who have the money could start to think of these things too. So, we'll have to figure it out. But we are getting to the end of our time, Stuart, for this week. Thank you again for Athletics Chat Week 3. I will make sure we get this up. Have a great week. And I will follow up with you for next week.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Stuart, thank you. Have a great one. Talk to you soon. Bye. Well, hi, sports fans. It's Larry Eder, Athletics Week 3, Athletics Chat 3. This is our epilogue where Larry tries to put in 5 minutes what Stuart and I spoke about for 35 minutes. It was a lovely day in Oxford, England, and in San Jose, California. You got to hear wind chimes in the backyard from my mother's numerous and prolific wind chimes. And there were little hummingbirds flitting around and butterflies and this huge lizard too, because I have the coolest office in the world when I'm in California. Anyway, what did we speak about this week? Well, we started out with kind of the how things are going. We talked about the interview that Stuart did with Joe Coates, the new CEO of UK Athletics. UK Athletics is very similar to USA Track and Field, and UK Athletics is getting a lot of crap right now for things that are deserved, things that are not deserved. It's just the nature of the beast. I think UK Athletics is one of the great success stories of the last 15 years, although part of it you hear about, part of it you don't. The truth was that back in 2002, 2003, they were near bankruptcy because of a drug case, and you had British Athletics was saved by Alan Pascoe, John Ridgen, and Ian Stewart. They came in and they said, we're going to find sponsors for you through our fast track agency. and we're going to professionalize track meets. And they did. And that put money into UK athletics, which was British athletics, coffers, 40 million. In fact, I believe that the largest single sport sponsorship, 50 million pounds sterling, which is what, about 72 million bucks, came from one of your HMO groups in the UK, who was a wonderful sponsor. And then under Neil DeVos, they were told, well, you can't be our big sponsor because we should have a bunch of different sponsors. So Neil DeVos came in, fired Fast Track, thought he could keep all the sponsors and save the 15% commission. And boy, was he wrong. He lost a whole ton of people. And I know for a fact, because I spoke to the health management company, that while they couldn't do 72 million US anymore, they sure could do about 22 million, and their phone calls were not returned. I was aghast. And this wasn't done by anybody who was loaded. We had a conversation before we started drinking, and they told me what was going on, and they didn't get it. And all I could think of was, well, the new management decided that maybe they wanted to spread the wealth, get a bunch of different sponsors. But sometimes, before you can do that, you sure don't want to screw up a big sponsor like Aviva. And where did those guys go? They went into rugby. So money goes from athletics into rugby. That bit of cluster FUCK was not the end of it. The sad thing is that you had these great athletes who were developing, from Mo Farah to Jessica Ennis. 2012 was one of the most amazing Olympics, not just because London hosted it, but because the home country did so well. And one of the real stories over the last 15 years is the rising success and return of British athletics to some of its former history. There's a great group of athletes coming through there, but that's because there's a lot of people who work very hard, some fantastic native coaches, fantastic British coaches, and also some coaches they bring in. And there's athletes that are developing. I'm fascinated with the whole multi-events group. There's some fine sprinters, some really fine distance runners, some good field event people. And you see athletes from Scotland, Wales, England, Northern Ireland. And it's fascinating to watch. And I think I've been watching them in China, quite frankly, and how they're developing and how they've kind of rolled with it, and how the UK figured out what entertainment was for sports. And that's one of the big legacies. But the guys who should get the credit, Pascoe, Ridgen, Stewart, get very little of it. Some of the challenges with leadership within the organization. And so Joe Coates, who Stewart thinks is a wonderful person, and I believe he believes she's up for the task. I wish her the very best of luck. But she's got a lot of landmines she's got to deal with. And the coronavirus adds to it. The coronavirus is adding to it all over the world. You know it's affecting, excuse me, you know it's affecting the coffers of every athletics federation. How do they pay the bills? What are sponsors getting? And that's a big challenge. What athletics needs right now is a global company, like an M&M Mars, like a Coca-Cola, that and like a great auto company that really sees the benefit and gets behind developing not only the younger athletes, but new program. I'm looking forward to the Impossible Games and seeing where that goes on June 11th. And Stuart and I both tip our hats to that. We're concerned about where the other meets are going to go this year. Are there going to be other meets outside of the Czech Republic and Oslo? We'll have to see. Can you get athletes around? Can you get media around? You know, it's fascinating right now that media are being attacked everywhere. In our sport, the way it's being attacked is that with sponsorships going away, media organizations can't pay their bills, how they support riders. I've been able to keep all our riders going because they believe in it, but the coffers have gotten to be a challenge. So we're looking for sponsors, as we always do. We're putting up 10 to 12 stories a day. We're coming up with new programming, Socialing the Distance, which featured Clayton Murphy this last week, and Stuart in My Athletics Chat weekly. Plus, we'll be doing some other things that I think will be fun. But we need your support. Eyeballs. Read our stuff, pass it on to friends. Sign up for the RunBlogRun nightly newsletter. Listen to we've got some new things coming up. And check out some of our old videos. Check out some of we'll be putting up some of the medal conferences from Doha too, which will keep it kind of fun. But Stuart and I had a lot of fun this week. We talked about the legacy of the Olympics. We finished up with, we only gave him 3 minutes. That's all he deserves. Lamine Diack, former president of the IAAF, he and his son stole money from the sport. And more than anything, besmirched the sport. And anybody who loves the sport should just think these guys should be in their own hell. And I'm not sure that Subco's had one day where he didn't have to deal with the stench of what they've done. But there's a lot of people who love the sport, athletes, fans, coaches, sponsors, potential sponsors. And between us, we'll find a solution. This is Larry Eater, finishing off the epilogue and probably a bit of proselytizing. If you love athletics, check out what we do. If you've got friends who love athletics, tell them about what we do. We've got some local sites at the Running Network, too, that have good regional information as well. And we ask that you support them. This is Larry Eater with RunBlogRun, signing off.